Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. When I asked Heather Quinn to marry me, I thought I knew exactly what I was getting into. We'd been together 3 years, and on the surface, things looked good. I ran a cybersecurity consulting company that had grown enough to give me stability and a comfortable life. Heather was a wellness influencer with about 5,000 followers. She wasn't making big money, sponsorships here and there, maybe $25,000 a year, but she lived like she was already famous. The night I proposed, she cried, said yes, and immediately began talking about her vision. It wasn't just a wedding, it was an event. She wanted the kind of day people would talk about for years, something to make her feet explode. At first, I didn't push back. I had savings, and I figured a one-time expense was manageable if it made her happy. But the invoices kept stacking up. Every week, there was a new contract to sign: caterer, band, videographer, decorator. I started to notice that her excitement wasn't about us celebrating together, but about how she could package the wedding for her followers. She'd drop comments like, "This collaboration will boost my brand," or "We can leverage the Quinn Coleman name." That last one gave me pause. We weren't even married yet, and she was already branding my last name like it was merchandise. A few nights later, I was at Isaac Monroe's poker game. Isaac's an attorney and one of the sharpest people I know. Between shuffling cards, he asked, "You getting a prenup?" I laughed it off. "We're solid. Don't need it." Isaac stopped dealing and looked me dead in the eye. "You own a company, Dustin. Protect it. You'll thank me later." I drove home that night thinking about his words. By the time I walked through my front door, I knew I had to bring it up with Heather. I waited a couple of days before I brought it up. Heather was sitting on the couch when I said, as casually as I could, "Hey, Isaac mentioned something the other night. He thinks we should have a prenup." She stared at me like I'd just insulted her family. "A prenup?" she repeated. "Yeah, nothing complicated. Just something to make sure the business I built before we met stays separate. Standard protection." Her jaw tightened. "You think I'm marrying you for money?" "That's not what I said. It's just a safeguard. If we split, what's mine stays mine, what's yours stays yours. That's it." She shook her head. "If you trusted me, you wouldn't need that. We're supposed to be partners." "I do trust you," I said, keeping my voice even. "But trust doesn't mean ignoring common sense. Isaac's right. I've got employees and clients who depend on me. I can't risk that." Heather's face hardened. "I'll sign a prenup when hell freezes over." I nodded slowly. "Fair enough." She looked relieved for half a second, like she thought I'd dropped it. But I hadn't. Later that night, her phone lit up with a call from her mother, Valerie. I could hear the voice through the speaker. "How dare you insult my daughter with this? A real man doesn't hand his fiancée a contract." "It's not an insult," I said, calm as ever. "It's standard. I'm not asking Heather to give up anything that belongs to her." "You're abusing her financially," Valerie snapped. "She's giving you her best years." "She's 28, not 80, I replied. The next day, her father, Michael, called me with the same script. Contracts kill romance. Real love doesn't need conditions. I didn't argue. I just listened, hung up, and let them think they'd made their point. That evening, Heather dropped another vendor contract in front of me and started talking about centerpieces. When I said we still hadn't resolved the prenup, she waved it off. "There's nothing to resolve. I'm not signing. Now, roses or tulips?" I smiled, picked one at random, and let her think she'd won. After that conversation, I realized arguing would get me nowhere. Heather wasn't going to budge, and every time I pressed, she and her parents just doubled down, so I stopped pushing. Outwardly, I played along. Inside, I was laying down my own plan. The first thing I did was move the wedding money. I had set aside a chunk of savings specifically for it, but instead of leaving it where she could pressure me to spend, I placed it into a secure escrow account. It could only be released if the prenup was signed and notarized. No signature, no funds, clean and simple. Heather never noticed the change. Then came the first real red flag. One afternoon, I got a call from my bank's fraud department. "Mr. Coleman," the agent said, "we just need to confirm some details on a joint line of credit application with Heather Quinn." I froze. I didn't authorize that. The rep hesitated. "So you didn't submit this request?" "Absolutely not. Cancel it immediately." They did. I didn't confront Heather. Not yet. If she was bold enough to try pulling that, I needed proof and documentation, not just a fight that would end with her family screaming at me again. I called my operations lead, Caleb Morgan, a guy I trust with both my company's systems and my own sanity. I told him to do a quiet audit, make sure none of our accounts, business or personal, were exposed. Caleb didn't ask questions, just nodded. Meanwhile, Heather was in full planning mode, posting mood boards and hinting about big partnerships on her social media. She never mentioned me by name, just my fiancé or my provider. That word stuck in my head like a thorn. She thought I was just sitting back, letting her have her way. She didn't see that I'd already started setting boundaries she couldn't cross. And when the time came, I knew exactly how I'd use them. It didn't take long before I found something that told me everything I needed to know. One night, while Heather was out with her bridesmaids, her laptop pinged with an email. The subject line read, "Sponsorship proposal draft." Curiosity got the better of me. The message was from her maid of honor, Lena Ortiz. Attached was a polished pitch deck titled, "The Quinn Coleman Wedding Experience." Inside were slides describing the event as a branded lifestyle weekend, complete with influencer tie-ins, product placements, and exclusive media access. On one slide, Heather had written, "This collaboration will highlight my personal brand's growth and solidify Dustin's role as the stable investor in our journey." Not a partner, not husband, investor. I closed the laptop, sat back in my chair, and let that sink in. To her, I wasn't building a marriage. I was underwriting a marketing campaign. From that point, my strategy sharpened. Quietly, I contacted every vendor. Where possible, I converted deposits into transferable credits. The catering contract? I shifted it into a future client appreciation dinner. The florist's deposit? Applied toward a corporate holiday gala. Even the photographer agreed to roll my deposit into business branding shoots. Piece by piece, I was reclaiming every dollar, redirecting it from Heather's spectacle into things that actually mattered. She didn't notice because she wasn't watching the details. She was too busy posting stories about becoming Mrs. Coleman and teasing partnership collabs. At the same time, I went ahead and booked a placeholder civil ceremony for immediate family only. It was scheduled 3 months out, a low-key affair at the courthouse. No one knew but me and my lawyer. The condition was clear. The prenup had to be signed beforehand. If she signed, we'd marry. If she didn't, there'd be no ceremony to show up to. Heather thought she had me trapped under deposits and social pressure. She had no idea I was already moving the chess pieces. And soon, she'd find out just how cornered she really was. The breaking point came during a menu tasting at the venue. Heather insisted that her parents join us, and I agreed. I wanted them there. I needed witnesses. We sat at a long table. The chef brought out plates one after another. Heather's eyes lit up with every dish. Valerie made notes like she was judging a cooking competition, while Michael nodded approvingly at the wine pairings. When the last plate was cleared, I set my folder on the table. "We need to talk," I said. Heather frowned. "About what?" "We're in the middle of a tasting." "About the wedding," I replied. Or, more accurately, the fact that there isn't one without a prenup. The table went silent. Valerie froze. Michael's expression hardened. Heather's voice sharpened. "We already discussed this. I told you I'm not signing." I slid a packet of papers across to her. "Then you should know, every deposit is secured under my name, and most of them are already redirected. Catering, flowers, music, and photography. All transferred. I've kept records." She flipped through the papers, her face draining of color. "You canceled our vendors?" "I converted them," I corrected calmly. Heather's jaw trembled with fury. "This is blackmail." "No," I said evenly. "This is me respecting your words. You said you'd never sign. I said fair enough. Now we're at the point where either you do or there is no wedding. Period." Valerie slammed her hand on the table. "This is emotional abuse." I looked at her. "Protecting what I built isn't abuse. It's common sense." Michael leaned forward. "You're humiliating our daughter." "She humiliated herself when she tried to open a credit line with my information," I said. I pulled out the bank alert, set it on the table. I didn't press charges. I documented it. Heather's voice broke. "You went behind my back. You ruined everything." "No," I said, standing up. "I just stopped funding a performance." She didn't answer. She just sat there shaking, Valerie whispering in her ear, Michael glaring at me. I left them at the table. The war had officially begun. 2 days after the tasting, Heather went online. She didn't name me directly, but anyone following her could read between the lines. "When the person you love tries to trap you with contracts and threats," she said on her story, eyes red like she'd been crying, "you learn who they really are." I didn't respond. Not yet. Then came her big move. A fundraiser. She launched a page titled, "Help Me Save My Dream Wedding." The description painted me as the villain, claiming I blindsided her weeks before the big day, canceled everything without warning, and held the wedding hostage until she signed unreasonable paperwork. She asked for $60,000. The donations trickled in, mostly from her relatives. By day 3, she had $1,800. The comments, though, told the real story. "Why not just sign the prenup?" Sounds like he dodged a bullet. This isn't financial abuse. It's responsibility. Within a week, she deleted the whole thing. Her sponsorship started drying up, too. Brands didn't want to be tied to someone with a messy public image. She was posting less, deleting comments, and lashing out at people who questioned her side of the story. Then came her attempt at negotiation. She showed up at my place with Valerie and Michael. Arms crossed, Heather said, "I'll sign, with conditions. 1, it expires after 5 years. 2, the house goes to me if we split. 3, I get a monthly allowance, $10,000. I stared at her. "That's not a prenup. That's extortion." Valerie jumped in. "Be reasonable, Dustin." "I am. The offer is simple. Sign the original agreement, or we're done." Heather's face flushed crimson. "Then there's no wedding." "Okay," I said. They left without another word. After that failed negotiation, I knew it was finished. Heather thought I was bluffing, but I wasn't. I called the last vendor, finalized the credits, and pivoted the entire budget. The date we'd reserved for the wedding became something else, a charity gala hosted by my firm, raising funds for online safety programs in schools. When the invitations went out, people were surprised. Some asked if the wedding was postponed. I told them the truth. It was blunt, but it left no room for spin. Heather lost it. She started calling, leaving furious voicemails. One said, "You humiliated me. Everyone will know you canceled my wedding." Another said, "You think you're smart? You'll regret this." I saved them all. The engagement ring was the last piece. She refused to return it, claiming it was hers to keep. I filed the insurance claim, reported it as lost property. A week later, a small package showed up in the mail with the ring inside. No note, just silence. Meanwhile, Valerie sent me a string of emails, long rants about how a real man provides without conditions and contracts are for cowards. I forwarded them straight to my lawyer. He told me to keep everything in a neat folder. I did. On the night of the gala, I stood in the same ballroom Heather once called her dream venue. By the end of the night, we had raised enough to fund the school program for 2 full years. I looked around at the people laughing, networking, and celebrating something real. It would have cost me everything for one night of staged photos. Instead, I had turned it into something worthwhile. And for the first time in weeks, I felt free. Months passed after the gala, and life moved forward in a way I hadn't expected. My business gained new clients from the event, and the scholarship fund became an annual tradition. Heather, on the other hand, went silent online for a while. When she returned, it was with a new angle: financial empowerment for women. Her workshops barely drew attention, and the comments were brutal whenever someone brought up the fundraiser she'd tried. She locked her account, went private. Last I heard, she was back at her parents' house. As for me, I wasn't in a rush to date. But then I met Maya Reynolds, a financial analyst, smart, steady, sharp. On our third date, she said, "I've always believed in prenups. 2 people should protect themselves first, then build together." That was the moment I realized I'd never again tolerate someone twisting my boundaries into accusations. One night, I thought back to that conversation in my living room. That decision saved my business, my savings, and years of regret. The truth is simple. When someone shows you their priorities, believe them. If they make financial protection a deal breaker, they're not building a marriage. They're looking for leverage. My only regret? That I didn't end things sooner. But maybe I needed to learn the lesson this way. Now I know, love without boundaries isn't love. It's dependency. And dependency disguised as romance will burn you every time. Thank you for watching.